welcome all back to this second session of Academy Camp number 5. Thank you for, trusting us and being with us. It's a pleasure to continue the work with Jordi Pascual, our partner here for this Academy Camp number 5, and who is managing these conversations with our lead experts for the previous 4 Academy Camps. So this morning, we engaged in a conversation with Cristina da Milano from ECOM on audience development, Academy Camp number 1. And now for this second session, but third Academy Camp, it will be Sylvia Mann, Director of InfoRelais, who accompanied us for and with Vesprem Balaton on the issue of international cultural cooperation, vast subject, which thanks to your approach, Sylvia, we opened up further than Europe, because we also talked about going beyond our European borders. So it's a pleasure to have you here, Sylvia. Welcome. And Jordi, of course, the floor is yours for this first part of the conversation, and then the second part, during which we will engage with colleagues from Vesprem Balaton in particular, but also other invited guests. Thank you all very much. Go ahead, Jordi. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Mercedes. I have the great pleasure to be convening this conversation with Sylvia Mann, great colleague, a wonderful expert. She is the director of InfoRelais in Austria, tailoring services for culture and creative industries policy development. She chaired the European Union Creative Industries Expert Group. She also chaired the European Capital of Culture Monitoring and Evaluation Panel, the jury that decides the European Capitals of Culture. So many of you, European Capitals of Culture, have met her. More than 2 years of experience in European cultural cooperation, also active globally, involved in several initiatives in Asia Pacific, in Africa, in Latin America also. I had the pleasure to share with you, Sylvia, transfer of knowledge between the European Capital of Culture and the Ibero-American City of Culture. And you're also involved in the development of the African Capital of Culture with us and with UCLG Africa. So a great pleasure to hold this conversation with you. As in the morning, I will try to make this conversation a real conversation. I will ask some questions, but considering your words, I would ask for further explanation or complementary information on some of the issues you will develop. And the first question is quite easy, always. It is obvious in the case of this European Capital of Culture capacity building, because European and international dimension is one of the key elements, compulsory, mandatory elements of the candidacy. But let me go to the foundation, to the basis. Why is international cooperation, why is European cooperation something that any cultural organization should consider, should have in its program?
Yes, thank you, Jordi, for first the introduction and very kind words. You asked the big why question, Jordi. Why should we cooperate internationally? And I would say it should be something completely natural, as there is, if you dig a little bit deeper, I do not really see how also local activities could not have international or even global dimension or cross-border dimension. So we are all, I think, much more connected than it is in our minds, in our everyday action. And already in that sense, I think it's something quite natural, which we should develop much more. I could also say it a little bit more political. If we look at the future transformations ahead of us, I could not imagine one single answer which can be solved without global cooperation. So, and in that sense, we need culture in order to go ahead and to learn to go ahead together.
Very clear and very sharp. In the academic camp of Vesprem, you agreed on a set of recommendations for writing, elaborating partnerships. When you are appointed as European Capital of Culture, you are supposed to build partnerships with the other European capitals of culture, other prominent cities that are developing similar topics to the ones you are developing, to the ones the capital city is developing. What are the lessons learned of these partnerships, European and international partnerships, that European Capital of Culture should consider?
First, maybe to frame it in a little bit the broader context, these partnerships. Normally, in European capitals of culture and also in culture in general, people often think that international cooperation is a synonymous for cultural exchange or artistic cooperation. I think this would missing out some important elements in European capitals of culture, for which European cooperation and building up of partnerships could be of considerable added value. So in that sense, I think the first lesson I would like to state here is the lesson that European dimension concerns all 6 criteria, all 6 chapters of a bid book, and also then the related implementation. So let's just think maybe on the first chapter. It's about cultural strategy. So a European Capital of Culture is not only a one-year celebration, it's a multi-annual transformation process of an urban area by the means of culture, arts, creative industries, creativity, etc. So already, for example, in the cultural strategy development, it makes sense to go for peer learning, to connect with international initiatives like the Agenda 21 for Culture, or with other kind of peer learning programs and support. So already there, to consider these elements as being also concerned by European cooperation and exchange, I think is crucially important. Then the next thing is or next lesson learned is that when you start preparing a European Capital of Culture, already to have this European and international dimension as an integrative part from the very beginning. So not as an add-on, not to say, okay, first we do a local project, or we try to build up a local project, and then we look further, but already to understand that in the whole planning process, that it's of added value to reach out to European partners, to learn, to get inspired, and already elements or structures like the ECoC fora, these gatherings, these informal meetings are excellent places to get in touch, to get inspiration, to exchange, etc. Then we still observe that in ECoCs, maybe the ECoC Foundation or the main implementation body is very well aware about this need of European and international cooperation. but not yet mainstreamed is that all cultural organizations in a city should benefit of this big European project, in that sense that they are all getting somehow experts for European and international cooperation. And last but not least, I think there should be also understood the European dimension as an integrative part of the legacy of an ECoC. That means to understand all these efforts, not ending then with the ECoC here and then somehow to say, okay, now it's done, and we do maybe a nice publication and then it's over and we go to the next topic, but to understand that this is a strategic project, a strategic transformation process to build up also skills, capacities in European cooperation, to build up networks and partnerships for long-term cooperation, so that this European dimension remains something which is integrative for city development, then also in the years after.
You have mentioned four elements, Silvia. The first one is very interesting. It is very dear to what we do here in United Cities and local governments. We were born out of the worry to provide a good frame for cities, willing to have a cultural policy that responds to cultural rights, say it in one sentence. You have been involved, you have been in contact with great European cities, those that have integrated the European and the international dimension in their cultural strategies. What examples come to your mind? Either European capitals of culture or other cities that have experience, have successfully integrated this analysis of other cities, other examples in their cultural strategy. The long term, we are talking about the long-term cultural strategy.
Maybe I would rather take the occasion to travel outside Europe, because I think it's also important to understand that this is a global trend, that cities try to improve their cultural policies, try to connect to international networks. And I would like to refer here maybe to the cities of La Paz and also of Chinchu. So La Paz in Bolivia and Chinchu in South Korea. And I was deeply impressed by both how they have, from the very beginning, as far as I understood these examples, try to connect to international know-how, to understand how others do, to invite and project promoters from other continents to learn, to share their concerns, their difficult questions, to be open also, that not everything is perfect, that it's not about showcasing, but really about learning, connecting, bringing common objectives together, and to be international from the very beginning. I had the pleasure, for example, to be in Chinchu. Chinchu is a middle-sized city in the south of South Korea for their first international conference, where they connected to whole of East Asia, plus yes, how could I say, post-Soviet Union countries, plus European experts and good practice promoters. So in that sense, already from the very beginning, to say there is so much outside from what we can learn, from what we can get inspiration. And I think this is really something which could serve as a model, and also the openness to address challenges and problems. I think this is something from which we can really learn. And La Paz, very similar. I know it a little bit less. I think surely you know it a little bit more than I know it, but for many, many years, really a front runner in many of the crucial topics for city development. I recall also some very ambitious activities related to creative industries, fashion industry, with a lot of international success. And all these examples are in front of our nose, just to be open-minded and to open doors and to listen and to exchange. And it can be so inspiring and so motivating to go ahead with strategic development.
This is very interesting. You say in your initial remarks, you said something which touched me. Is we're going to need the international connections. It's not, say, decorative or an added value or an added component of the cultural strategy, or not a decorative component of the ECoC program. It is something we need. In the current, say, stage of the global conversation on what development is. Can you explain a little bit more that thing?
Yeah. So let's make it very concrete. Let's think about climate change, for example. And we know all that at the very end, now there is a crucial need that people engage for that. I think the only way now to solve somehow, or to solve partly that challenge, is that people engage not only verbally, but also in their actions. So we need, in that sense, also players, international players who are able to go or to come closely to the citizens. And there, the cities, the urban areas have a crucial role to play, because there is a possibility, or maybe a better possibility, to connect to people than from the national level. Because by all your activities in the cities, you are closer and you are also able to do model action, even when national policies go somehow crazy and do not find common, how could I say, common ground for positive solutions. So we see when we look at the international cooperation level, and very sharply right now with what is happening in the Ukraine, that this kind of nation states and nationalism brings us to conflict. So we need other actors who are able to connect to people, and then also to connect internationally. So in that sense, maybe it's getting a little bit complex. Let's see, to work again with an example. When Trump was in power in the US, the cities continued, many US cities continued to engage for climate change mitigation actions. And this is a little bit what I mean. If we could build international solidarities on this local level, we could counterbalance these problems we are having currently on the national level. And if we want to do that, we need to connect with the people on the local level. And the bridge builder per se is culture, arts, common activities. And this is somehow where cultural policy can connect with all the other policy areas.
Yes, in the area of culture, I'm happy to mention here the work of the International Cities of Refuge network, the ICORN, a global network that connects those programs, those local programs that host artists that are in danger, artists that are persecuted. a very important network that now is playing a very important role in the current crisis because of the Russian invasion to Ukraine. And another very important global network that cares for this connectivity is the PEN International, a century of work in defending the rights of writers and the rights for self expression. And yeah, there are very good examples also in the cultural field.
Exactly. So this is this level on which we need to strengthen this connectivity. And if there is an underlying understanding that all our challenges are also international, yeah, from that moment on, we can do another kind of cultural policy, another kind of support program, and enhance this dimension.
Another element that you mentioned in your list is that all actors in the city, all cultural actors in the city, should be aware, should include this European and international dimension. Of course, big fish, opera houses, museums, the festivals, they already have it. They are very often they are already in international networks. What about the not that big players? How an European capital of culture can support the connectivity of the small and medium size cultural initiatives that are, I would say, more important for local development than the big fish?
I think we must see here different elements. One is the fact that more and more European capitals of culture are hosted from smaller cities. So I think many of them do even not have these big opera houses and these big art centers, which are already not only in the EU, but also globally connected. I think this is more really a phenomena of the big metropolises, if they are capital cities or not, but many of the ECoC cities are smaller, middle-sized cities. And so there is certainly also a part of the institutions which is already in European programs. We discover them, for example, in Creative Europe projects or applications. And so there is already a certain connectivity, a certain exchange, a certain level of partnership established. Then for the smaller ones, I think there are still many who are not connected. And there is also the question with whom to connect, where to connect, how to connect, and how to finance then also these cooperations. And often in the framework of, for example, EU funding, we have to go away then from Creative Europe. So the Erasmus program provides good support possibilities. There should be also starting a new program very soon. It's Erasmus for Culture. And in that sense, there is possibility for mobility also. So you have not only the small organizations, but also individuals or individual artists or individual cultural researchers who will have more opportunities to get abroad, to go to conferences, to do small research work, to do cooperative artistic projects, etc. So in that sense, there is lots of new possibilities. I think the many complaints for many years on EU level that not sufficient support is available for the smaller organization has been now, yes, found some concrete and good answers. And one is this upcoming Erasmus for Culture.
Can you explain a little bit more what this Erasmus for Culture is about?
Yes, so this is based on 2 or 3 pilot activities on the EU level. This was called iPortunos, and it was managed by Goethe Institute and by the European Cultural Foundation, and it allowed for mobility support of individuals. So that means people often lack of small budget in order to do their first international exchange or to pursue an international artistic cooperation. And exactly to fill that gap, this iPortunos program provided support for 2 years or during 2 years you could apply. And now it was understood that it's successful and it's really needed and that there is a lot of interest, and therefore it should become a permanent support instrument now. It will be put on new institutional ground in the course of this year, and then it should be operational during maybe still 2022, but maybe beginning 2023. And is a very flexible tool for mobility support.
So imagine I am the director of a library in Clermont-Ferrand, or I am an employee in the Museum of Braga. Would I be able to ask for funding to Erasmus for Culture?
Normally, yes, we must always see the details of the call, but in a way, this was the case so far. And also, if you are an individual artist and you are based in Veszprém, you should be also able to apply, to add an additional category to your list.
Good, very good. Let me also add that, as you know, Sylvia, we are in United Cities and Local Governments. We are quite closely connected with the International Federation of Libraries and with the International Council on Monuments and Sites. Almost impossible that a city has not the city library and the local museum, or the main monument or the main site. And these two organizations, because I am discovering step by step the complexity of both, and but also the capacity of both. They have wonderful committees, subcommittees on great issues such as gender equality, climate action, rural development, and I am enthusiastic about the capacity they have to connect small and medium size cities and initiatives.
Maybe to add also on what we have just said before, it's not only about financing opportunities like the EU funds, for which we provided one example, but also to engage in these networks is also a great opportunity for smaller organizations. It helps on many levels. So you get easily then contact to a wide range of different countries, different organizations, but which work in very similar objectives than yourself. And also, it's also a good starting point to get ready then for maybe bigger EU applications. So even a smaller organization who is maybe not able to take the lead on a Creative Europe application can, by the means, for example, of networks, identify bigger organizations in that network who are able to take the lead and then join, for example, as a project partner also.
Another of the elements you mentioned is the legacy, and how the European Capital of Culture should plan the legacy. And I understand the sustainability of the international and the European connections. Can you explain a little bit about that? Can you elaborate a little bit more on the importance of legacy?
First of all, maybe to explain the term of legacy. So
yes.
is what we use as jargon in the European capitals of culture communities, I would say, for the time after the ECoC year. So this is the legacy years, etc. You can find all these terms. Jordi, you already said yes for the sustainability of the project. So the question, what remains? And this comes also still from this kind of starting point of the European capitals of culture, where this was merely a one-year cultural celebration, one-year artistic program. And then the whole initiative was transformed to a long-term transformation of an urban area. So we speak about maybe 2 years of preparation of the bid, then 4 to 5 years to prepare the ECoC year. Then we are having the ECoC year, and then we are having the sustainable effect, the legacy, what remains. So the whole process of an ECoC, I would rather say we speak about the period of 10 years. So I explained already from the very beginning that the European and international dimension is that what the European capital of culture also differs from normal local cultural development process, because from the very beginning it has this European dimension, for which I say it's a transversal dimension. So also already in that logic, of course, when I say the European dimension is transversal, it should be then also transversal for everything which remains. So what we have, maybe to highlight one element out of these different legacy elements, very often we still see, and we have seen also in past years when the ECoC year is over, that maybe the organizations which have done the ECoC, they are most often closed a year after. So for example, you have an ECoC in 2021, 2022, and then these organizations do not exist anymore from 2023 onward, for example. But this means also that all the competences which were accumulated in this organization, especially also related to European networking, to European cooperation, to EU project management competences, disappears, because these people have to look for other jobs. They go to other organizations. Many of them even leave the city, which was the European capital of culture. And this is something which is wasting a lot of how could I say, potential, yeah? Because when you build up for 8-9 years a topic and related competences and related teams, and then you shut down, it's a pity. And you should not do. So there should be from the very beginning reflection how these masterminds for European cooperation you have built up, how they can continue to work in the city, in cultural organizations in the city, or also that maybe even is considered that this ECoC Foundation becomes, for example, I don't know, the International Cultural Cooperation Center or something like that for the city.
Any example of European Capital of Culture that has been successfully addressing this fact?
Yeah, there is, for example, as far as I understood, for example, Paulina, who will speak still this afternoon, is one of these people who continued after the ECoC year and still works on international outreach and is present on this kind of exchanges. And this is one example. I think she will, or she can highlight that afterwards herself.
We developed the partnerships side. In Vesprem, you also developed 2 other important areas. financing, and communication. Let me ask on financing first, because you have already mentioned Creative Europe, the adaptive capacity of this program, or the fact that this program has adapted to the needs of European capitals of culture, of their international and European connectivity. But perhaps you can share a little bit more on the key advice on financing the European and the international cultural cooperation of ECoCs.
Yes, of course. You mentioned already the Creative Europe program or Creative Europe budget. So also maybe for those joining us who are not so familiar with the European Capital of Culture financing context, the Creative Europe program provides also direct financing for the selected European capitals of culture. So there is this trend, but in addition, of course, ECoC foundations and also all cultural operators in the related cities and regions are invited to join Creative Europe calls to participate in related projects and activities as leading organizations, or also as project partners. Especially as we are having many also smaller European capitals of culture, with also then often smaller cultural institutions. As I said also previously, it might be a good strategy to join first as a partner organization and maybe to consider leading only a little bit later when having made first experiences as partner. What we observe in general is quite a strong focus on Creative Europe, maybe also Erasmus calls in the European context. And what would be a clear advice also from my side is to use much more also the regional funds. So there is a huge policy on European regional development. It includes also the cross-border programs like Interreg. And when we think, for example, about the situation of different ECoC cities just here in Central Europe, it would be also just an excellent opportunity to further use the Interreg programs together. And the Interreg programs have also very interesting element as they can combine urban development with cultural development, or also innovative or sustainable tourism development. So often topics very closely linked to European Capital of Culture initiatives, and which could be also, we discussed about that also already previously, be very interesting related to legacy again. So because these are multi-annual projects, as it links also very much to city topics. So in that sense, it could be a very interesting element in that sense too, and provide then the financing to continue activities, to pay people, and to maintain some of the key areas of an ECoC project.
This is nicely explained. I like the Interreg. You explained it very well. The connection between several of the challenges in an European capital of culture are well considered in a natural way, in a not difficult way to become operational in European capitals of culture. But of course, this also involves a very close relation between the cultural actors, those that govern, rule the European capital of culture, and the other planning, the planning of the public spaces or the planning of territorial development, which is not always easy. That connection locally is not always done.
Yeah, therefore it could be also wise to consider to maintain, for example, the ECoC Foundation or the ECoC Association, because it's often publicly owned. And it could be in that sense a very good arm's length organization for example, exactly Interreg applications, because these kind of organizations are able to build the bridges between the public sector and the cultural operators. We see often that the cultural operators are not having the capacities to manage a whole Interreg project. We see on the other side that cities often struggle with their very strict frameworks. So they have very complex decision making. They have often also overly complex internal rules related to public procurement. They are often having also difficulties to employ staff or additional staff. And all these could be solved by these arm's length bodies like the ECoC foundations, because they are close enough in order to be able to influence local policies and to interact deeply with the institutions, with the administration. And on the other hand, they would be able to connect more deeply to all the NGOs, private actors, etc. So they would have an ideal bridge builder function in that.
Yeah, very well said, very well explained, Sylvia. Let's go to the anything more to add, Sylvia, on the financing and the lessons learned. I am considering the report that you wrote for the Vesprem Academy Camp in autumn last year. Do you have anything else to share on financing before we go to the third element, to communication?
I like always to understand a little bit the bigger context also, and try to bring forward the related cultural policy debate. And when you look in general at funding sources for international cooperation, be it inside Europe or also then beyond, we are having often the problem outside EU funds, that this is often small budget, irregular calls, also often not really based on strategies. And if ECoC could also join the voices to tell national authorities to professionalize their international support programs, I think it would be of great help for all of us.
What do you mean? Because I understood you, but I think that what you are asking needs more explanation. So let me try to say it in other words, and please comment and amend. What you're saying is that the national ministries for culture or the foreign affairs ministries in EU member states do not sufficiently support European and international cultural cooperation programs. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, and this is something that you would like to boost?
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah, because this is often the missing link. So also, for example, the EU programs, and then you need the co-financing. You do not have, and then you run to 10 people and 10 different administrations in order to collect a little bit of co-financing, because there is not really a big program or big budget somewhere. And what we also see in many member states, that there is not always a good cooperation between ministries of culture and ministries of foreign affairs. So these are often very diverging policies, etc. Instead of putting resources together and building a strong element in that, in many countries, this is quite chaotic thing.
All right, good. Let me also add that the European Union has interesting funding schemes for local authorities working in Africa, in the Caribbean, in the Pacific, under this ACP, Africa, Caribbean, Pacific program, which are of interest to European capitals of culture. But here I'm afraid that the timeframes for the programs are not very suitable. I mean, I think that only if the European Capital of Culture is appointed immediately after, only if immediately after the appointment, the city is connecting to these non-European funding schemes, it will be successful in obtaining some of these funds, or being able to aspire to obtain those funds, because those partnerships are not easy to be built. But let me also add, and I would like to in the second round to listen to your opinion on this, the relation with European capitals of culture and other global initiatives. I believe this is of paramount importance. But let's consider this in the second round. Let's go to the communication, Silvia, to the lessons learned on the communication side. You discussed InvestPren. You wrote good recommendations on this dimension. Can you summarize those recommendations, please?
Yeah, maybe to highlight some of those. I think what we must know, or what we know, is that European capitals of culture are also done, of course, to be on the map. That means to be seen more, to be visited more, to be in more interaction and exchange. So in that sense, of course, international cooperation is something very important and something very crucial to all these projects. But at the same time, it's also very challenging. Because as an ECoC organization, these institutions become an additional player in an already existing international communication framework, which is most often dominated by tourism. So as this links then closely to tourism and to cultural tourism, we also invited thinkers, researchers in that area in order to understand a little bit better future trends related to international tourism communication or international tourism activities. And so in that sense, I think main lesson learned, which is now more widely discussed in tourism, is that tourism needs a change, and that we must stop talking about tourists, but more about guests and hosts. And in that sense, also this influences, of course, how we design the programs, how we interact with those visiting the city, and also, of course, how we communicate. And the group concluded also somehow that it's very crucial now to tell stories, to rely on narratives, to connect to people, to allow this interaction to people. And in that sense, also initiatives like, for example, inviting individual journalists have proven to be a very interesting or promising approach, because this allows also to create a real experience and to make these multipliers also feel and understand the city's new narratives, the city's new stories.
Tourism, that's one of the ghosts, or one of the, not just ghost, one of the key players for European capitals of culture, one of the key players in local cultural policies, be them ECoC or not. And also the destructive capacity of tourism to pollute local cultural development. Now, it's such a complex and difficult debate that I fully agree with what you said. It's unavoidable dimension, very much connected to communication, but it is also full of difficulties and full of challenges.
Yeah, but maybe let's wait a little bit. Some of the preparing ECoCs, they want to address this new kind of tourism. So I want to highlight here the example of Badische Salzkammergut 2024. So they have a whole program strand somehow to keep it, to say it in my words, about reinventing cultural tourism, and also to find new ways away from mass tourism and etc. So let's see what is coming out also of this kind of new adventures. And it's completely clear that it's challenging when we see that we are having these huge income dependencies. So regional growth depends often to up to 50% on tourism income, and at the same time we see that these unsustainable practices cannot continue like that. But afterwards, it's about jobs, it's about income. Then in cultural tourism, it's about doing these kind of activities in another way, on a more human scale, more participative, more interactive, also more in the sense also of reciprocal cultural understanding, multicultural dimension. But it's a very, very challenging and tricky thing, by the way, as many other of these transformation areas we are having ahead of us.
Yes, absolutely. It is also important that you mentioned the new narratives, the new stories that the European capitals of culture generate. This is also, we cannot forget the say more conventional media, TV, radio, and the tension between the national operators and the local operators, because now most of the European capitals of culture are not the capitals, and there is always say this, one of the key elements of local vibrancy, cultural local vibrancy, is the existence of a powerful media generator that reaches all people living in a place. That it's the only source of information is not the national TV or the national radio, but the local content. Did you discuss about this in Vesprem? This say balance between support that national media should give to a small and medium size scale initiatives?
As you know, all these topics, we had three main topics with partnership, communication, and financing. We could fill full week of exchange and of learning and of good practices and of debates. So we did not specifically discuss the role of national media, but what is also came out of the shorter discussions we had also on media was that, and this is very clear, ECoCs do not have a communication budget which allows them to buy space on national TV to an extent that this becomes a real media campaign. This is much too expensive. So based on the experience of many of past and current ECoCs, it's much more about finding partnerships. It works to a certain extent also with the media. From own observation, also when I see an Austrian media landscape, I would say it works to a limited extent. And it remains in niche programs, so often cultural programs. And even there, it can be that the journalists do not really further dig into the very nature of a new European capital of culture. So in many journalists, it's still this idea, this is the one-year celebration. Then there is already the question from the journalist, and who is next year? So in that sense, you understand that they are looking for some cultural program, the related highlights, what could be maybe also interesting for their target audience. But there is a big lack of deeper understanding about the whole ambitions which are behind the new European Capital of Culture framework.
All right, let me close this first round with a question also related to the, say, successful European capitals of culture that finished, say, in the 10s, and that are still, or even before, that are still considered as an example, or you could consider as an example, inspirational examples for current capitals and for future capitals. Is there any city that comes to your mind, any city you would like to highlight for its good balance in, say, partnerships, financing, and communication, the European and international dimension of the ECoC?
Maybe not all in all. But what we can observe is that some of the ECoCs in the past years, and I would maybe go back 15 years, remain somehow in the European and international circles on different levels. So, for example, I think most of you would say that Liverpool was a European Capital of Culture. And this is also because there is a continuous research, there is evaluation activity, there was a celebration 10 years after the ECoC, etc. So this is, for example, one element or one city from where we must also objectively, I think, say this is a successful European Capital of Culture project. And it was also possible really to have a profile, to take something more recent where there are interesting developments, is, for example, related to Matera. Because Matera is able, it seems, to continue after the year quite actively. I think they were initiators of this Expo activity, Dubai Expo, where at the Italian pavilion, different European capitals of culture were shown. But I do not only see them again in this context, I see them also on all kinds of strategic EU activities where they appear, where they are project partner, where they engage, etc. So in that sense, it seems also that there is a certain still fire behind and people bringing the project forward. Both what I've said does not say that I think that they had the best ever ECoC program, but just to see that obviously in these two cases it was possible to continue to have a real legacy and also to have a profile. Because if somebody would now ask me about evaluation and research, I would say Liverpool. And if somebody would ask me now about outside EU communication, I would say Matera. And this is already a success. Yeah, so that means they became visible in these areas. And maybe this is also a message, a general message for, because your question was also from whom can we learn and who is interested. So in that sense, I think there is not something like a 100% successful ECoC, which has succeeded in all areas. It's more about really to see these wells of different experiences. Yeah, and then to find where are the most interesting elements. For example, also to say something completely different, which we did not discuss now, but which would be also a topic of international cooperation. It's skills and capacities and all these areas. And for example, I think that from concept and implementation, the capacity building program of Kaunas is very interesting. Yeah, and I could also imagine that this is something which will remain.
Good, great examples. We're going to listen to next year's European Capital of Culture. We have three people representing Vesprem Balaton 2023. Cristina Forró, the Senior Project Manager on Outreach and Capacity Building. The International Relations Manager, Julia Butch, and Nemet Sarolta, the SME Projects Coordinator team. Please go ahead. A pleasure you are here.
Okay, thank you very much. I invite to the floor my nice colleague Julia as well, because we prepared our presentation together, as we were together on this project from the beginning. I am the project coordinator of the academic camp what was held in Hungary, and Julia was our advisor to build up the whole program.
Good afternoon, everybody. Greetings from Vesprem. We are really in Vesprem in the offices, and greetings from our team Vesprem Balaton 2023. I would like to thank in the name of our whole ECoC team for this wonderful opportunity to be part of this academic camp series. So thank you Interarts, Mercedes, Fran. Thank you, Sylvia, worked with you. It was a wonderful time, and we have learned a lot from you and together with you. And I thank you also for this opportunity today, Jordi, and also thanks for the last talk with in the circle of ECATC. And also for the podcast possibility, because yeah, we got many possibilities through this academic camp, what we have had in November and the end of November. I wanted to give a small introduction of our city, also to better understanding, to have a better understanding of our work, and also reflecting what Sylvia said in her presentation. We are one of the small cities. We have only 60,000 inhabitants in our city, Vesprem. It's 110 kilometers from Budapest, Vesprem, and in the north of the Balaton Lake. Maybe you know it's the largest freshwater lake in the middle of Europe. It's Central Europe. We have some mountains in the north, and it is really characteristic that this is the city of queens, because the first queen of Hungary was crowned here in the city around 1000. And we have the title since 2019 as a UNESCO City of Music. We have different long existing festivals like Vesprem Fest, our violin festival, classical festival, the street music festival, and the early music days. And we are speaking about Vesprem, or you know, Vesprem is the city won the title. Just the whole region is added to our project, and that's why we are calling Vesprem Balaton 2023, because to our project there are 120 settlements, municipalities involved at this moment, and we are covering a territory which has at about 500,000 inhabitants. So it's a very large population comparing to the 60,000 inhabitants in Vesprem. This was a short introduction about our city and about our academic camp. You were talking about the different topics. So we were talking about partnerships, communication, and financing, but I'm giving the word to Christy.
Yes, thank you. This will be our presentation like this. We will switch from one another, but to highlight the main topics, you can see them on the screen. We wanted to talk about them in an international level, because we have realized why we were working on the topic of our academic camp, that international relationships, partnerships, or international communication, and also the international financing opportunities are the fields that we have to develop within our team and with our partners as well. Because to tell the truth, it's a big thing to be brave enough to apply for international funds or to get a partnership from abroad. And our cultural institutes, for example, have to be encouraged to do this on a long-term period. There are some cultural institutes which already do this, but we have to embrace the others as well. While we were organizing the events, our academic camp, we had to face the issue of COVID and this pandemic situation. Our program was held in November, so we were hesitating with Sylvia and Fran while we were organizing the event, if we should do it online or offline, and excluding our international family members. So we decided to have a hybrid event where what we organized in a really nice area, in a museum, in a gallery. But all the presentations in the morning session were shared with our partners, with our ECoC family members internationally online. So they could join the discussions, they could join the lessons as well. So there were around 55 local members who were listening the lectures, and there were 44 online participants during the session. So it's a quite big team who could learn from this academic camp, and it's a thing what we are really proud of. And we could involve 15 speakers during our program. So it's a really nice number of participants altogether. We listed the members who participated on the academic camp. There were not only our own ECoC members, project managers, but also the cultural institutes could be presented from Veszprém and from the region. And as I mentioned, there were other ECoC cities presented during the lectures.
So, and some general summary. It was a very inspiring thing to work out of our offices. And Christina mentioned the House of Arts of Veszprém, and it was a really unique environment to work and to get new ideas. It was also really a good opportunity to know each other better and work with other colleagues, not in the normal setting of our work, and also to work with colleagues from our cultural institutions. We work very closely with the cultural institutes here in Veszprém. There are as 15 as I know very well, and we are meeting them every month in a monthly meeting. But it was a special opportunity to work not only for 1 hour but for a longer time, and it was also a great opportunity within the ECoC team to know the colleagues better, and they know new thoughts and to see other perspectives from other cities.
Yeah, so we could strengthen the partnership within our ECoC team, but also outside of our ECoC team as well. And it was really nice to see and to learn from our ECoC family members how they managed their own COVID situation in the past and how they are preparing for any occasional things what we don't know yet. So we could learn good practices, how to establish international connections during the pandemic, but also to be flexible, to learn plan learn how to plan everything again and again. So it was really great. We listed the topics on the right corner, what we could reach on our, I think on our second day was the partnerships. And we could also invite, thanks to Sylvia, a presenter from Canada, and we could learn from him. And it's also really important not to forget that there are countries outside Europe as well who are really happy and to join us during our journey and to help us and to share their experiences, because they have also cultural programs, strategies, fundings, what they would like to share with us. So it was really great to see this open-minded and helpful participation during our academic camp sessions. And what we have learned from our puppet theater manager, who highlighted it, that it's really important to put energy and time to these partnerships, because from this mentality, or on this mentality, we can build the partnerships, strong partnerships, which are from long term. And I think I would highlight this word mentality, which is really, really important for the future and for legacy as well.
Yes, building international relations takes time, but it's worth of it to work on it. The second day was about international communication, and we have excellent speakers from Linz, and also Rijeka, and also Paulina from Wrocław, who is today with us. From Linz, from the presentation, we have learned that we should show the real face of a city, of our city, and also to know better our everyday heroes, and also show our everyday heroes and everyday lives, because we can know a lot of things about the city from Wikipedia. So we should go closer to the citizens of a city. Paulina mentioned less is more, and a stable team is really important within an ECoC team, and also for communication. It was her advice. And we should have a balanced image for the city to recognize easily, not to complicate. We mentioned, or we saw, because we had a panel discussion with communication colleagues from ECoC, different ECoC members, like from KONAS, from ASH. Paulina was also part of this discussion. And we saw we need more platform for so kind of discussions. It is really helpful to know each other's work and to get knowledge. And as Sylvia mentioned, what is going to happen with this knowledge, what we are building up, and it's stacking in ourselves, but it's also need to be shared among us, and to be kept for longer period.
And about financing, our last day was about learning from different international and European funds, learning about them. And what we had to realize and keep in mind, that it's really important to have a person who is who knows everything about international funds, because there are quite many what we can apply for. And for participating on any of these international collaborations, it's a really great initiator to apply for any of the listed fund opportunities, and to have a legacy project, or to maintain or sustain our programs. we need the help of the European Union as well. And it's really important to know everything, all details, and to know where to find them, how to manage financing projects, because sometimes it's much easier than we would think. It's also a lessons learned that are, as I mentioned before, that our cultural institutes are sometimes afraid to apply for international partnerships, and it's the same with international fundings as well. But if there is a knowledge what we can use within our team, it makes it much more easier. Also, international funding is really important for international workshops, and these could be managed by a dedicated person, what we are lacking in the present, and we plan to have, or plans to have, one which is really helpful.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it's also a link what Sylvia said, and that it's supporting what Sylvia said. In small cities, they are not experienced with writing grants, and we should start with the smallest one and not directly with the Creative Europe one. And actually, among our institutes, I mentioned in a previous call, we have only 2 Creative Europe projects running in our city, what we know. So it is also a sign that we should support, and we have, I think, 4 Erasmus Plus projects now running in our cultural institutes. It's more easy to submit, and we have to work on it and encourage our institutions also. Some pictures. Really artistic atmosphere we could work, and we would like to thank you for your kind attention on behalf of our Veszprém Balaton 2023 team. Kristi.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christina. Thank you very much, Julia. That was very useful, very complete. Now the floor will be given to Sarolta Nemeth.
I'm working as a researcher at the Karelian Institute of the University of Eastern Finland, so pretty far from Veszprém and Hungary. And I am working as a member of the coordination team of an Interreg Europe project, which includes 5 ECoCs. So it's basically we have a partnership of European Capitals of Culture who have got the title in the consequent years. So the first one is Leeuwarden from 2019, then Matera, no, 2018, Matera 2019, then Rijeka 2020 for them with the COVID hitting the project, then Timișoara, whose original year was 21, but now it's in 23, and finally Kaunas. So these are our 5 cities. And,
5 cities and 6 years. That's quite funny.
No, yeah. We managed together so that they can learn very fast from each other in interregional exchange, because it's an Interreg Europe project, and our aim is to promote local developments through promoting local entrepreneurship, local SMEs and communities in the framework of the ECoCs, so that these benefits the ECoC programs and their legacy, as well as local companies benefit from the legacy and the ECoC projects. That was the original idea, and the project is soon over. We've been running parallel with yours, and unfortunately we were not included in any other academic camps, although I think we would have had a lot of things to share, but at least now. So I have a presentation of which the first few slides I will show, and that basically tells the framework, and then I will share with you the links where you go into the details about the actions and the cities, what they've done in our projects. So this is an Interreg Europe project started in 2019, in that happy year where we were not aware of COVID, and we were very enthusiastic starting interregional exchanges with these cities. The need came from the fact that we noticed, and these cities also acknowledged, that there doesn't exist any support framework, especially financial incentive, for these cities to closely cooperate and work out together solutions to their shared problems, which are in the planning phase, the implementation phase, and also in the legacy phase of their projects. And they were all interested in this issue, how to involve better the youth, young entrepreneurs, small and medium-sized enterprises in this program or in their projects.
Change the slide.
They all, I am not there yet, Agi. Sorry, this is my coordinator, Agnes Nemet, who is sometimes warning me, and it's fine. So basically the thing is that, I don't know how much do you know Interreg Europe. It's a different program from the other Interreg programs. The aim is to improve policy instruments. So to influence the spending of EU money or other budgets of municipalities or regions. Public actors are involved in these projects, mostly as partners. And the key stakeholders are those who actually have the money, the funds in their hands. So, for example, the regional operational programs or city strategies have been affected by our partners' work in their own regions or cities. That's the Interreg rule. That's the aim. And so they all found a particular measure or objective under their operational programs or city strategies, which related to the objectives of our project, which is basically answering questions or solutions. How could local small and medium-sized enterprises be engaged in and strengthened through European capitals of culture? And to influence these measures or objectives or improve them, make them more effective, they had to create action plans. The first 2 years of our project, from 2019 to 20, was spent on developing action plans to achieve this promotion of local SMEs and new entrepreneurship, mainly by way of increasing cross-sectoral cooperation and looking for ways to link local entrepreneurship to the European Capital of Culture in a positive long-term legacy. So as this has not been really part of the ECoC program explicitly, so there's not an eligibility criteria that SMEs have to be brought on board. And it's part of the general engagement requirement of communities and local residents and local stakeholders. But we wanted to focus on this particular aspect. If I go on, sorry, on the button. I show you shortly the actual partnership and a little bit about our funding and funder, but then I go on. This was the methodology of our work. So the first 2 years was about developing these actions, and the last year was to implement these actions and monitor their implementation, evaluate the impact or success or failure. And what is the unique and really good practice, what we want to share with you in our project, is basically stemming from the Interreg Europe program's requirements, but also from our insistence on engaging as many and as diverse and as wide set of stakeholders as possible within the regions, within the cities. So we had equal emphasis and effort on internal stakeholder learning processes and workshops, and external interregional, so interregional learning and exchanges of good practices. And these were not just running parallel, but there were instances where they were connected digitally with online workshops. Their stakeholders could also join us, and the international interregional learning got mixed up. But also sometimes when COVID still allowed, or before COVID, we even carried some stakeholders with us to our project workshops and site visits to other cities within the Interreg projects framework. And various input-output processes happen between these intra-regional and interregional workshops, while we had the same questions dealt with in these workshops, and inputs were coming from what was learned from other regions down to the stakeholders, where it was further developed. And then the results of that workshop and development was then shared with the other regions again in the next project workshop when we had an interregional session. This took a lot of meetings, a lot of discussion, a lot of communication, basically monthly engaging stakeholders and our partners in conversations emails, exchanges, online and on-site meetings. We also structured the 2 years around the key topics that were defined in the initial phase of the project. The first action was to look for potentials, regional potentials and needs, specific problems that needs to be solved. So stemming from that work, we basically identified the problem of cross-sectoral cooperation and engagement of more non-traditional stakeholders in the ECoC. So not just the cultural sector, but the creative industries, then also any educational institutions, any company or smaller and medium-sized businesses in the cities. So really sports, NGOs, whoever. So to have a broad set of stakeholders in these workshops also. So that was very important. And the other important focus was the topic of legacy. So how to actually already plan the legacy from the beginning, not just during the ECoC year when there's no resources and time to actually pay attention to legacy issues. So Leeuwarden with very good legacy program could show a good example in this, and also Matera managed to reach quite good results with that, despite what COVID did to all these cities actually in the effectiveness of their work. So action plans were developed. They had to be endorsed and signed by those authorities who own the structural funds or other budgets. And money was assigned to implement these actions developed in the 2 years. And these actions actually have been implemented. Almost all of them, a few of them are still running now, end of May, June, maybe early July, but more or less the action plans have been already implemented. And there's a kind of a rough summary of what kind of actions these have been. So very different things, different ways, because of different regions, different needs and different potential, different situations. We had actions which strengthened the cultural and creative sector linked to the ECoC project. Then governance innovation for local collaborative ecosystems to develop cultural sites, that was in Matera. Then mobilizing youth and education, especially in Kaunas, but also targeted training for the creative and cultural startups or young people who would like to start a business, as well as awareness raising on a larger scale in the whole city. Big hackathons and fairs were organized in Timisoara, making a wider and a more cross-sectoral user base for a platform which then digitally they have created on the city website to continue this work during the ECoC year and also hopefully afterwards with all these stakeholders and create synergies and new ideas. Also some digital solutions, an interesting one from Rijeka, the creative doctors, which is actually helping small enterprises to get some help, support, advice for mentors, those who are more experienced in doing business in the creative sector, from handicrafts to all sorts of digital and interesting solutions. And it's been a success. They just use basically Facebook for that. But all these details you can find, and now I will skip the actual examples, you find on our project website, which is an Interreg Europe's website, ECoC SME. Action plans are published there, signed action plans, news already in the last 1 year about implementation. And we have a final dissemination event just within a month from now, which is open to anyone to join online. At least most of our sessions will be live online streamed and audience can interact and send comments and ask questions. But of course, everyone is welcome to Matera on the 9th and 10th of June to come and join us in person and also see in person Matera's solutions and developments and in a site visit, which is organized on the 2nd day. So I really want to encourage everyone who has the means and the time in such a short notice to come and see what we've done. But if not, then the website has a lot of information. So please browse and contact us and the cities if you are interested in any good practice or anything that has raised your interest. Thank you.
Kiitos, Sarolta. This was Nemet Sarolta. Nemet.
Sarolta is my Christian name, and Nemet is my family name.
It's a great presentation.
Thank you.
It's a great project. I was not aware of the work you have done in this very important topic, and we will consider it for sure in our report of this Academy Camp 5. If you wish to convert this PowerPoint or to select some of the slides and share it with the audience of this Academy Camp, feel free to upload it to the chat, because you have lots of very interesting information, learnings, very useful to us all. Thank you again.
I will do that. I make a PDF and then it will be there. No problem. Okay, thank you.
Paulina, Wrocław 2016. Sylvia mentioned that you are one of the few capitals that have managed to keep the flame, keep the fire of international connectivity, the intelligence alive. Paulina, you have the floor representing Wrocław 2016.
Hello, everybody. Thank you. It's nice to see you on Zoom, this time in summer, because last time with many of you when we met theoretically, I was the one who was joining in from outside. It was another season. Yeah, I would like to share some words from Wrocław 2016, because it's also been many years now, like it's 8 years ago. So I think plus including the 2 COVID years. So I think it's like a long history behind us. And I had this privilege to be there from 2015 until now. So, and observe also the organization, how it, as you said, was in flames and then maybe in smaller fire, but still didn't extinguish. Let's call it like this. No, of course, I'm joking. We still have an institution. The institution is the legacy institution that in between changed the name, first once, now the structure since this year, but it's still there, including to some extent or even to big extent the same people. And this is what I think Sylvia said, and it was also repeated in different parts of academic camps, of this continuity, this, I would say, sustainability of projects, of cultural projects, and especially of international collaborations. And why is that? I think one of the reasons is that they are quite complex, or they may be quite complex projects. So you need someone experienced, and you need someone who have this expertise and experience. So it's really worth to keep the person who went through, let's say, the first Creative Europe, or the first Erasmus, or what was called Youth in Action in old days, or just like had this experience, went this way once, and then can either run it again or give expertise to the other people. Because I think a lot of these complaints that were also addressed here, saying that smaller institutions don't want to apply, or some cultural institutions, they just use the usual funds and the usual ways. It's also because, to be honest, these are complicated issues. Yes, of course, not every application, and iPortunus, and now let's hope the Erasmus Plus for Culture will be the solution for complications. But if you look at the standard, let's call the Creative Europe, the standard one, these are rather complex things. So experienced people are needed. So then you have the ECoC, you build capacity of the organization, some cities bigger, some smaller, and of other institutions, and also now a creative sector enterprises as well. So it's really, I think, a pity not to continue then with prolonging, using this expertise and keeping these people somehow involved in the city. Wrocław is a big city. It's like over 500,000. So this thing of people just fleeing to the capital or another big city is not so big, like in some, like we know from some other former ECoCs. But still, at some level of your personal development, you think it's Warsaw or nothing, so to say, Warsaw or Brussels. And I see here a big role of the ECoC and the ECoC legacy, because it doesn't have to be ECoC. It can be the museums, the whole ECoC ecosystem, as we call it, to keep those people to keep the people, let's say, employed, keep them engaged, use the skills they have and also the connections they have. And this is what we succeeded to some extent in Wrocław, that even though the organization got much smaller after the end of ECoC, it's not that we're continuing like it was. So many, or those who wanted of the people, got employed in some other state institutes or institutions, were kind of pitched and presented by other activists as those who went through this way and can now be in use and use their capacities. Speaking of capacities, I mentioned the applications and this whole formal system, but of course another even more important, I would say, aspect, sorry if I speak fast, I'll slow down, are connections and contacts. And I'm saying that especially now because after 2016 and the years after, then came COVID. And we could clearly see how COVID cut this connection and how those people, also our colleagues who started their career or their hope for career in international relations within 2020, how super different reality they entered, yeah? Like when you can get to know people in Zoom, when you need to make friends with them in Zoom, when in different languages you need to explain your idea of a project that may not even take place because of COVID, and then apply together and then discuss complicated issues. And it was such a different specifics of these discussions and of this whole meetings, let's call them meetings. I find it still funny to say you met someone on Zoom because it's still video conferencing. But still, as I said, I'm old, so maybe that is why. And then, so I'm saying when now, let's hope the reality, that the old reality is back there and one can meet and there are people, it's important to invest in building relations, in getting to know people, and then also, again, supporting and employing and empowering those people who have this connection, because they do contribute to the cultural development of the city with this what they already have in their potential. Yeah, COVID I mentioned, I tried to make, and the third, it's third but probably the most important, why the legacy here somehow succeed, is of course the support of municipality. Yeah, it was from beginning on municipal project. Municipality in the figure of city mayor was very much behind it, and through all the difficult way was behind it. And also after 2016, when it finished for municipality and then the mayor that changed, it was also kind of clear we want to refer to this heritage, to this legacy. We want to tell the story of us in ECoCs. We want to say that, I don't know, we have the cooperation with Basque country that we never had before, and we want to invest in this cooperation till today. So, but this is, I think we were lucky to have it, and I think many cities also are, but this is like, if you are in a municipal, in a public body, then this like public support is super important. It's not always the city, it's sometimes the state. In Poland, you're lucky if it's the city, rather not the state. But still, when you have experienced people with this flame and connections and the support of municipality, then I think there are three kind of conditions how to succeed. Did I answer your question, Jordi?
You did. You did. It was a very good answer, and I enjoyed it very much. You explained it well, how it operated and how it is still alive. I remember that one of the main news I had from Wrocław was a wonderful book, Culture and Human Rights, an initiative of your mayor. And fundamental book on cultural rights with very clear explanations on what it means. Wonderful work, and yeah, it's a wonderful legacy. One of the components of your wonderful legacy.
May I say one more thing? Because now when you said book, it's what I'm gonna say. It's intertwined with my questions about the out of Europe connections and generally international cooperation as a way or a tool for networking. Because Wrocław, apart from being European Capital of Culture, was the UNESCO World Book Capital in the years 2016-17, which was also important because we had our book program, and literature and books is important here. And after us, the next city was Conakry. And this is how somehow Wrocław got involved in this network. We also, in the earlier mentioned ICON, and a few years later, Olga Tokarczuk got the Literature Nobel Prize, and she's the inhabitant of the city. So right now for us, it's like, you know, literature is the thing, but it's also that this is also a legacy of ECoC. I'm not saying she wouldn't get it without ECoC. I'm just saying that literature was also involved and the UNESCO Book Capital was also involved. So these different networks and these different levels of cultural life, it doesn't have to be the ECoC office, whatever it's called. It's just to support the culture. And then you can see how these different flames, I would come back to this comparison, started, you know, sparkles, how they flame later. And this is what I think what is super inspiring.
Great that you mentioned Olga Tokarczuk, wonderful writer. If go and take one of her books, she's amazing. Let's go now to the Mediterranean coast, to Rijeka. Irena Kregar-Segota.
Hi everybody.
You were the chief executive officer in Rijeka during the capital year, the difficult months of the pandemic. But still, please let us know how you managed to keep the European and the international dimension, the lessons you learned in those difficult months, the current situation. What is the situation 1.5 years after the end of the capital year? Well, no, you were extended, right?
Yes, we had an extension for a couple of months. But first of all, hello everybody. I'm very happy. Thank you for the invitation. Very happy to be here and to share some of the things that Rijeka learned. It's a very vast topic, European dimension, European cooperation, international cooperation, and we can really talk about it for days. It goes from international communication to international productions, all the way to involving international audiences. And from what we heard from previous speakers, I mean, each city, I would say, has really good examples of projects, good ideas of how to strengthen European dimension. At the beginning, I would really like to say some general things. First of all, that we thought that it was important to have a very cohesive idea from the bidding time through the implementation, all the way to the evaluation and legacy of what kind of European cooperation, international cooperation is needed. And in that sense, I would encourage you, no matter what phase of your project you are in, to really try to think in a long-term framework. It's not always easy to do, but this will help you not to really lose your energy or start projects that do not have real future or that will exhaust your resources. Because we all know that although we have several years after the designation, the time really passes quickly, and the implementation year, celebration year is just there. So first of all, I would really like to start with pointing some problems and issues that it's very good to think about. So very often we do not have clear strategy. There is insufficient planning time, as I already mentioned. We start with projects that are not sustainable over time, or that are too ambitious, too difficult to organize. Then there are also financial projects, financial budgets. lack of specialized staff that we learn, because as we said, the European dimension has really and cooperation a lot of dimensions. So you really need different people for international co-productions, or different people from starting and managing international projects, or looking for financing, not to speak about engaging international audiences. Also, things like what kind of geographical choices and priorities do we make? Do we stay regional? Do we go really global? Is it random, or are we searching new territories? Also, we are requested, all of ECoC cities are requested to strengthen ECoC brand and to speak about European dimensions. So this is another challenge that we need to address in the activities that we undertake. When we think, there are probably more other problems and issues that you are well aware of. But I would say, as when we reflect upon those, as maybe some kind of recommendation after what Rijeka has been through, that it's really that each city needs to think and express its own European dimension and develop its own cooperation. And this is really defined by characteristics of city, cultural assets, history, past, very important local expectations. Although we are talking about international, there is always this duality with local expectations and the expectations of different stakeholders in the city. In that sense, it's very important from the beginning to, like you have probably, and you are constantly opening debate with different stakeholders on different topics. So this is also something I would say that that should be discussed not just within implementing agencies, organizations, or your immediate partners, cultural institutions, etc., but also with maybe a larger group of stakeholders, because they are going to be the ones who will continue in the legacy years, who will continue with projects, whether some kind of networking, whether we are talking about volunteering program, etc. I would also say that the European cooperation and expressing and international cooperation and expressing this should not be a silos, but should be integral part of your program and your philosophy that you are articulating throughout your program. And finally, I would say that it's very useful also to think and to look into what European Union is, what kind of initiatives they are stressing or trying to implement right now. At the moment, I have in mind a new European Bauhaus, which is a really very wide European initiative that with very ambitious, and that can be something that can be useful where you can links can be really created with your programs. So what I said was some very general things and conclusions after our year. I would now like to give you some examples of activities that we did regarding international and European cooperation. In the ramp years or years leading to 2020, we really tried to implement a lot of capacity buildings, but involving European international partners. One of the programs was, for example, a joint capacity building with 5 other ECoCs. It was called Lab for European Project Making, where we shared concerns, issues, but also knowledge and experiences between 5 ECoCs. We obviously developed very strong link with Galway 2020 with the informal network of ECoC cities, but also tried to really develop the concrete activities with European cultural networks like Trans-Europa Halles, Intercultural Cities, Airways, NEMO, Unique Network, etc. I'm sure you're all well familiar with those and you cooperate with them. And of course, application to EU funds and programs, which are useful for funds, of course, but more so for developing networks that last. In terms of a program, I would like to mention a program called 27 Neighborhoods. You can learn more about it on our webpage. This program, which was more than a program, it was a program line that was developed for 5 years and ran throughout the whole 2020. It's a good example, not just of international cooperation, but also of involving community. And this links on my stressing how international and European dimension should be reflected in your program and not something separate. 27 neighborhoods were all about 27 communities in Rijeka and in the region who were linked with 27 communities in Europe, 27 from each different European country. We were more of a coordinator and capacity builder for them, and somebody who helped them to develop this network, to develop cooperation. It's a wonderful example because its final results were wonderful programs, but also this network that continues to live. And finally, a few words about COVID. Thankfully, we did a lot of activities in the ramp year from 2016 till March 2020, and then we had to live through this horrible experience. Fortunately, Rijeka was in part of the world that was not, we were not in a complete lockdown. So when you had 85% of museums shut around the world, we were in summer 2020, we were able to do more than 500 activities, mostly with the local partners and national partners, because of course the borders were closed. But we really tried to use digital tools, to use platforms for disseminating what we were doing, but also for keeping existing networks and networking alive. Yeah, it's already been so. Our program ended in June 2021. We had this prolongation, as it was said before. There is the municipality has taken over now, and the City Department of Culture is the one who is taking care of the legacy, but also our different partners who participated in all of our activities, namely cultural institutions and associations who are our partners. They are continuing ties with the whole network. Some activities are going on. There are links, and I'm sure that everything that we implemented really strengthened the whole international profile of the city and strengthened the international capacities for cooperation of the whole cultural sector, locally and nationally. Thank you so much. I try to be succinct. Of course, I could talk for hours, and I would be happy to discuss any of those aspects that I mentioned. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Irena. That was great, extremely informative, and it was a collection of wonderful insights, great examples. So be reassured that this was great. It was extremely useful. Thank you very much, Havala.
Thank you.
Irena. Mercedes, Silvia, if you want to add anything before I close the session.
It was a pleasure, I would say. Isn't it, Mercedes? It was a great afternoon again.
Yes. Indeed. Thank you to all of you. Thank you to Christina, Julia, Sarolta, Paulina, and Irena. And of course, Silvia, for taking us through this afternoon taken by the hand by our wonderful Jordi. And Silvia, I've been thinking when listening to you, you've said it on and off. We are humans. Our species is here today because we have been able to cooperate. That's what makes us different from others on this planet, beyond the fact that, we have a soul and understand that we are finite, but we know how to cooperate. We do things together. And that is the basis of cooperation, doing things together, having an objective and working together towards that objective. And you've said this throughout this afternoon. And I think that we sometimes lose the vision that we know how to do it, that is what we are all about. It is about working together and progressing together. So be it, at local level, international, whatever. At the end of the day, that is what we know how to do as human beings.